Alright guys, what's up? It's Jack and welcome back to another video. And believe it or not, I did a recording and apparently my mic wasn't working or whatnot. I had to restart everything. So here we go again with a take two. And damn, that first one was really good, but we're gonna do it again. We're gonna go at it again. And I want to bring you in on this conversation because quite frankly, I want to talk about whether or not XDefiant may be too competitive. And this actually came from inspiration from the comment section as well as Twitter, because this is something that has been kind of whispered, and it was something that kind of stuck with me in my mind throughout the day, even when I was playing pool. And I wanted to bring you guys in on this because I know that over the years, even for those of you guys that are brand new around here, I know that over the years, a lot of you guys have had different experiences growing up gaming and stuff like that. And all of you guys are a multitude of different ages. According to my analytics, you guys are anywhere from your mid 20s to your mid 40s, right? So we've all had different gaming experiences, and I sure as hell have. I've been gaming for over 31 years. I am 38 years old, and everything from casual to first-person shooters. And now, for those of you guys that are brand new around here, I have been before before recently. I was like, when I was just covering Call of Duty videos on here, like for 10 years straight, I played nothing but first-person shooters, and the majority of that time was spent playing Call of Duty. And I also played some Halo in between and a few other games here and there. But for the most time, the vast majority of my time has been spent playing Call of Duty. And not just because of YouTube, but because of the fact that I was just a Call of Duty nut, a Call of Duty addict, a Call of Duty fanatic, you name it, right? So in order for us to address this, first I want to say that I see both sides. I see how XDefiant is quite casual, but I also see how XDefiant is quite competitive as well. So we're going to cover both sides. And the thing is, and ultimately, in order to address this, and again, this is not necessarily an answer because I personally don't think there is an answer, at least not until the game comes out. But the thing is, overall, in order to try to get a more clear view of this, right, I have to take you back to, like, let's say at least 10 years ago and make comparisons with today, because I think it's very important. And as time goes on in this commentary, I think you're going to understand why. And I think you're even going to relate to why or how. So let's get into it. So obviously, like, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, I was still very much a casual in Call of Duty. And despite the fact that I was a casual, I enjoyed playing the game, but then I eventually wanted to get better because I loved the game, just naturally, just the way it was. And then I basically became aware of the YouTube scene, the streaming scene, and stuff like that, which even fueled me and inspired me even more. And I was in my mid to late 20s by then. So, and then the next thing you know, I started getting good at the game. But not only did I start getting good at the game, I wanted to capture my own footage. And I figured out how to do that because of the content creators that I've seen, and I saw what they were doing. And of course, you know, you got to see how they did it and all that. And anyway, and then what would happen to me from a game standpoint was, before I started getting good, I didn't care about how I died or whatever it was. I just kept on playing the game, and I just enjoyed the game for what it was. I tried to play better every match, naturally, but it never really, like, I never really cared about what my KD was all that much. I did a little bit, but not to the extent. And my score per minute, my stats and stuff like that, or how I died, whether it was a cheap death or not, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't care about all that until I started getting good and until I started getting better, right? So when you think about that right there, in terms of how I've evolved, so to speak, right, through the influence of watching YouTubers, content creators, streamers, the pro players, just evolving in the game myself after getting better at it. My priorities changed, right? In terms of what I considered good and what I didn't consider good, what kind of score I would consider good, the amount of kills per match, all that stuff. All those priorities and points of views shifted because I had shifted as a player. I had gone from a below average player to an above average player. So when that happened, my expectations changed from below average to above average or whatnot. And it's funny how that works. And I think it's safe to say that if somebody in their mid to late 20s back then could be influenced and impacted that much, it's pretty safe to say that it's going to happen with the younger folks. So, what I'm trying to get at here is over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of things have changed in the gaming scene, right? In terms of like when you look at competitive gaming, it's gotten more popular. Prize pools are going up. There's more games out there that are competition level and stuff like that. More players are coming out of the woodworks. Streaming is more popular than ever now. YouTube is more popular than ever now. So many people are capturing footage now. It is on a whole other level than what it was 10 years ago. Just like 10 years previously to that, it was on a whole other level than it was then. So, and what has become popular, thanks partially to Call of Duty as well, was the competitive multiplayer scene. It happened with Halo at first, and then it happened with Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty, here's the thing that I want to say from another standpoint as well, is that at its core, an arcade shooter like an XDefiant or like a Call of Duty, at its core and at its foundation is not, I repeat, not a competitive game. Because there's a lot of cheese in and you guys, if you guys watch 402 Thunder, you know what I mean by cheese. There's a lot of cheesy shit that happens in an arcade shooter because of the way it's designed, the way the weapons work, and just the amount of freedom you have in order to customize your classes and with all the combinations, stuff like that. Like random stuff is meant to happen, but it's all in the sake of fun, right? But obviously, I don't know about you guys, but I'll speak for myself. Like when I started getting better, the random stuff started to kind of become annoying. And I actually liked the competitive stuff to a certain degree better. Like for instance, one main thing was one good prime example is I like competitive maps. Whether they're in Call of Duty or in Halo, I prefer competitive maps because of the fact that it forces you to engage in certain situations, and it makes you think, and you have to move. And I like things that give you a reason to move or a reason to do this or that, or something that doesn't let you get away with things easily. I like things that are a little bit more predictable. Now, remember guys, games like basketball and football, for instance, are very predictable games. And that's what makes it interesting. How do you make yourself unpredictable when you're playing a game that is predictable when you think about it? And that's what makes you a good player, as opposed to something that just gives you unpredictability from the start. That's something that's non-competitive, right? If you're getting if you're getting a guaranteed kill with a certain weapon, for instance, right, because it's that easy to use to where even a person without thumbs can use it, that is not competitive by nature, right? Or if you're just or if you're in an area on a map to where it's nearly impossible for your defense to be penetrated, for instance, that's a non-competitive map, for instance, right? So those are just a few examples. So, but that's just me, and that's what I prefer. And I didn't realize that I preferred that until after I started getting better. And before then, it was just like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to run around. If I get killed, who cares? I'll spawn back in, maybe get a kill if I'm lucky, or I'll try to get more challenges or whatever. That was my thought. That's the way I thought when I was, just playing to play. But then when I wanted to get better, and when I started taking the game a little bit more seriously, and when I did get better, and I certainly started taking the game more seriously, my priorities changed. So over the years, it's safe to say that a lot of people's priorities have changed, and we have kind of evolved, so to speak, in compared to where we used to be. But at the same time, if you really, and again, going back to the point that was said in terms of what I read, is that if you want a game to truly be casual, you have to obviously cater, like you have that foundation of what a casual arcade shooter is needs to be intact. Now, I think that's why they implemented the factions, right? So that way they can have that aspect in there, and it is something that caters to moving and such. But at the same time, I can certainly understand if somebody believes that XDefiant is too competitive, because when you look at the time to kill, it's it's not as high as Halo's, but it's like around Black Ops 4. So that makes it more competitive right there. And you're looking at the what else are you looking at? You're looking at the map design for instance, which a lot of them are 3-lane maps, that's competitive. When you look at the game modes, all of them are pretty much objective based, and objective based game modes are competitive. Only Halo, to my knowledge, to this day, remains the only game, the only competitive multiplayer shooter that has Slayer, aka Team Deathmatch, as a competitive game mode. Call of Duty doesn't have this. XDefiant is not going to have this. Hell, XDefiant doesn't even have Team Deathmatch in casual, which again, to this day, I still believe is a mistake. And it's one of the things that needs to differentiate itself from the casual to competitive. So, in other words, what the comment was originally saying was, is the game catered too much towards competitive? Like, for instance, just one example is no team deathmatch at launch, blah, blah, blah. So, and of course, with the map design, the health system and everything like that. And plus there's some, there's boots on the ground advanced movement, so to speak. That's what I call it or whatnot. So, again, all these things I think are perfectly fine, but at the same time, this is where I personally wanted to make this video, and I wanted your take on this because I feel like this is a conversation that can go both ways, and I personally feel that both ways are correct. If somebody would say to me, you know, that XDefiant is too competitive, I can certainly understand why, and at the same time, I can understand why the competitive side is there in the first place, and why things would be a little bit more catered to competitive now than what they were even 5 years ago. Because a lot has happened over the last handful of years, even as early as 5 years ago. A lot of things have happened since then, and a lot of things have happened to a lot of gamers. Gaming now has, in terms of competitive gaming, it's become the culture now. Look at even competitive gaming in terms of how far it's come over the last 10 years, or even over the last 5 years. You know what I mean? It's really, really come a long way. And a lot of players, even in regular casual pubs, have come a long way compared to what they were used to, what they used to be. And you're going to find, I don't know what the percentage number is, but you're going to find a higher percentage of people that are just better now in pubs. And especially when it comes to games that are being created today or more recent, right? It's just, I think it's just become the nature now. So if you think about it, it makes no sense to have skill-based matchmaking in pubs in that aspect alone. And I'm not just talking about XDefiant, because we know it's not going to have it in there, especially with my experiences. I've experienced everything. I've experienced a few games to where I was, you know, wrecking shit. And I've experienced a few games to where it was average. And I experienced a few games where I had my ass handed to me. But the ratio of that was the getting my ass handed to me part was on the lower end. Me kicking people's asses was slightly higher than that. And everything else was kind of towards the middle in terms of average to above average. That was my personal experience as far as XDefiant is concerned. And a lot of people are more familiar with that now. Like back in the day where I come from, people didn't know about how spawns work and stuff like that. I know this because I was one of them. So right now, people understand that. Right now, people have more access to it in terms of figuring it out. All you have to do is watch a YouTube video, and all of a sudden, you'll have a much better understanding about the game you're playing in comparison to back in the day to where people didn't even know there was a YouTube scene. And how I know this to be true is because I was one of these people, okay? Granted, the fact that it was 10 years ago or 11 years ago is besides the point. You know what I mean? And now, as gaming is even more accepted than it is than ever, especially with the competitive side of things and how gaming is slowly becoming more respected in every single aspect that you look of it, especially since it's gaining so much freaking money for people, whether you're doing it for a living or whether you're developing it or whether you're the publisher that's profiting off this stuff. Gaming is slowly but surely still respected. And at the same time, it's also, a lot of games are still disrespected as well, because a lot of people still haven't noticed the change that has gone through. But anyway, over the years, things have certainly evolved. And I think that it's become the natural way of things for games to have a little bit more attention focused on competitive, quite simply because of the fact that it prints money. So I'm on the fence on both about this in terms of like which side I'm on. But in terms of XDefiant being too competitive, it certainly is a possibility when you look at it overall. But I think it's because I think we prefer that and we like that because the majority of us, again, especially those that are watching the YouTube videos, that are watching streams and stuff like that, and or even being content creators ourselves, we, believe it or not, whether we like to know it or not, we are very much very amateur competitive players. because we're above average. We spend more time than most people playing these games. We certainly talk about it more than most people play these games. And we have a certain level of love and passion for the game more than your average casual. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I mean, kind of makes sense for games to be the way they are. But I certainly understand at the same time that it is very possible for a game to be a little too focused on competitive, and it can ruin the casual scene. I remember this happening in Black Ops 2, for instance. Like, let me give you an example. In Domination, in Black Ops 1, Domination was amazing, right? But then in Black Ops 2, what they did where they were is once you had 5 minutes would be up, you would have halftime, and then you'd switch over to the other side, regardless of what the score was, right? And you would switch sides to make things more quote unquote competitive and more fair, right? And more balanced, which is what competitive, that's what separates competitive Call of Duty or competitive in an arcade shooter versus non-competitive, right? And then in Black Ops 3, they kind of went towards the more casual side to where they kind of appeased both sides of the fence. And what I'm trying to say is what they did with Domination in Black Ops 3 is they made it to where halftime only occurred when you got to 100 points in terms of, 100 points in terms of the score, and then you'd switch sides and then yada, yada, yada. So the games would last long, but it wasn't a time limit. It was a score limit, kind of like what it was in Black Ops 1 and in Black Ops 2 combined. So it was kind of hybrid. And ultimately, that's what I think XDefiant is trying to do. They're trying to walk that fine line. However, that doesn't mean that they're going to actually accomplish walking that fine line. The game may very well be more competitive than it is casual. That is certainly possible, and I can certainly see where people are coming from when they say that. But at the same time, because of how I've evolved as a player or whatnot, and what I've seen through my experiences of being a super casual, and what I would call myself, like if I had to call myself anything, I would just say that I'm an above average player. About it. And I would say that over the natural course of evolution, the fact that a lot more people are just more interested in it from a development standpoint, it would make sense as to why they would do that. But at the same time, I am grateful that they've also gone in a direction and have made certain decisions that are actually going to cater to every player, simply because of the fact that when you do well, you're going to be rewarded, as opposed to fake skill, so to speak, or an algorithm that rigs the game. But again, I've seen both sides, and I agree with both. So I want to pass it on to you guys in the comment section. What do you think about this? Do you think XDefiant is too competitive? Do you think XDefiant walks the fine line very well? Or do you guys think that XDefiant is the most casual game that we've had in a while that just happens to focus on competitive in its own way as well, in terms of having a rank mode and all that kind of stuff? Let me know down in the comment section. I would really love to know your point of view, because there's always something that's mentioned in the comment section that I probably haven't even thought of, and I learned from it, and I'm very interested in it. So with that being said, I want to end this video with a quote from one of my favorite Michael Jordan commercials of all time, and we'll end it at that. So it's about failure. And he said, "I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career, and I've lost almost 300 games. And 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." So anyway, guys, let me know down in the comment section what your opinions are. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.